Watch right now on the Front News Project. Moscow and St. Petersburg have been shaken, hundreds of explosions, Russian oil ports reduced to rubble. UST-LUGA is still burning. The pseudo-empire can forget about oil. Hell in Lviv and Ivano-Frankivsk. Putin is killing Ukrainian children. And also a new offensive on Kyiv from the direction of Belarus. Why did Lukashenko go to visit Kim Jong-un? Watch fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines right now. Greetings, it's Vladimir Timoshenko here with you. And let's get straight to the main topic. A second consecutive Russian oil port on the Baltic is ablaze, this time in UST-LUGA. This is how Ukraine responds to Russia's barbaric shelling from residential buildings, historic sites, and energy infrastructure. For comparison, in Russia, Ukraine destroys what funds Putin's war budget, while in Ukraine, the Kremlin's army kills civilians. All the details will be reported and shown by our journalists.
The reckoning has come. Belgorod, as usual, is paying the price for yet another barbaric strike against Ukrainian civilians. As a result of the retaliatory missile strike, 450,000 residents of the region were left without electricity.
At night, the armed forces of Ukraine launched another massive missile strike on the energy facilities of the city of Belgorod. At the same time, during the night, about 450,000 people were left without power. Residents of Belgorod, Belgorodsky district, Shebekinsky and Yakovlevsky urban districts.
Explosions were also heard in occupied Donetsk. About 400 attack drones targeted Russian facilities in a single night.
So I came home and basically I saw this scene. You could see the fire from here.
The biggest retaliatory strike hit the Leningrad region.
It is still burning, even now. Really badly.
At the same time, air defense systems are operating in Vyborg, not without consequences for the locals. There, drone debris fell onto a building not far from the Russian FSB office. Here is one of the key shipbuilding enterprises specializing in the construction of ice-class vessels and offshore equipment. In the port of Vyborg, after the attack by Ukrainian drones, one of the Russian ships is sinking. Judging by the photo, it is a patrol icebreaker designed for the border service of the Russian FSB. Such an icebreaker costs about $300 million. In the port of UST-LUGA, the largest oil transshipment terminal in Russia is on fire. Through this terminal, Russia ships petroleum products to foreign markets.
I was driving here, everything was burning. At the oil facility, the port, everything was on fire. There is military equipment stationed on the bridge in Koskovo.
This terminal is located about 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. It is controlled by Rosneft. The Novatek UST-LUGA plant also processes stable gas condensate. This is already the second major raid on the region in recent days. Earlier, as a result of an attack, another large oil terminal in the port of Primorsk was damaged. The ports in UST-LUGA and Primorsk in the Leningrad region of the Russian Federation have stopped shipping petroleum products after strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Reuters reports that smoke from the Ukrainian attacks was visible from Finland. According to the agency, this was one of the largest attacks on Russia's oil facilities since the start of the full-scale war. Ukraine is doing everything it can to prevent Russia from profiting off the surge in oil prices caused by the war in Iran and Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of all global oil trade passes. The lifting of sanctions gives Putin the opportunity to earn billions to continue the bloody war in Ukraine.
And now to something truly terrifying. Another act of genocide by the Russian Federation against peaceful Ukrainians. A brutal shelling of western Ukraine. 2 people were killed in Ivano-Frankivsk, a National Guardsman and his 15-year-old daughter who had come to visit his wife who had given birth just a few days earlier. 6 people were injured, including a 6-year-old child. TSN correspondent Alapas witnessed the explosion and is ready to share more details about this tragedy. Let's watch.
The cameraman and I saw the Shahed drone with our own eyes. We happened to be outside when we heard the sound of the enemy drone right above our heads. It was flying very low, right over the very center of Ivano-Frankivsk. It lasted only a few seconds and then it rapidly headed toward its target. There was a loud explosion. City center, broad daylight. People were walking around, lots of parents with children. Frightened adults started grabbing their children and hiding closer to the walls of buildings since the nearest shelter was quite far away. The Shahed exploded in the center near the city and regional maternity hospitals. A man and his 15-year-old daughter received fatal injuries. He, a 51-year-old National Guardsman, was visiting his wife, who'd given birth to their second child a few days earlier.
Faster, faster, come on, 5 or 6 centimeters.
This video from the first minutes after the strike appeared on social media. A police officer is providing first aid to the wounded right on the street. In total, there are 6 victims, including a child.
Their condition is satisfactory, meaning it is neither severe nor critical. The boy who was hospitalized is 6 years old. His life is not in danger, although there are certain complications, but they do not threaten his life. There is a kindergarten nearby, and both its teacher and this boy were injured.
In the city maternity hospital, which was closest to the epicenter of the explosion, there were about 100 people, half of them pregnant women and women in labor. When the alarm sounded, everyone was taken down to the shelter. At that moment, 2 women went into labor. Fortunately, there were no casualties.
We did a really good job, and I think we managed to calm all the women who needed it. We have a psychologist on staff, and we ourselves are psychologists too. There aren't any who are extremely frightened. Some are a little scared, but now people have calmed down. We have a child in the neonatal intensive care unit who is on mechanical ventilation. He was also transported and taken downstairs. At the moment, the child's condition has not worsened.
In the nearby buildings, the blast wave shattered more than 100 windows. Utility workers immediately began covering them with plastic film so they could be glazed later.
And now it's time to analyze the current situation on the blazing Pokrovsk front line. Fierce fighting continues. Since the beginning of the day on the Pokrovsk front, the occupiers have tried 16 times to push our soldiers out of their positions in the areas of the settlements of Belitskoye, Rodinovskoye, Mirnograd, Greshino, Kotlino, Udaknoye, and Novopavlovka. 2 clashes are still ongoing. And here's another thing. Belarus may soon attack Ukraine or be used again as a staging ground for a new offensive on Kyiv. This is reported by Belarus Tomorrow. The decision on a possible offensive largely depends on the Kremlin, not on Lukashenko. The point is that Grigorik is allegedly trying to avoid direct involvement in the war because he fears internal instability. In other words, he's afraid for his own skin. So is a repeat of 2022 possible in the context of an invasion from Belarusian territory? Come on, let's work through all of this together as a team.
The Belarusian leader, who also happens to be the main idol and sycophant of the Russian dictator, is once again in the spotlight.
We see what's happening around us, and today we need to update our defense, well, maybe not our doctrine, but our defensive actions, so that everyone can see, and above all, our people, that we are ready to defend every inch of our land.
Following Putin's lead, Lukashenko is establishing relations with Kim Jong-un. The leaders of North Korea and Belarus signed a treaty of friendship and cooperation during the first official visit to the DPRK by the Potato Father, for whom leader Kim Jong-un held a lavish reception in Pyongyang. As part of the official ceremony, Lukashenko visited the Liberation Monument dedicated to Soviet soldiers and laid flowers at the request of the Kremlin dictator as a gesture of gratitude for Russia's assistance. Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus for more than 30 years, remains the Kremlin's main ally. Since 2022, he has provided the country's territory as a staging ground for the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and now he has also deployed Russian tactical nuclear weapons on Belarusian soil. In fact, Belarus has become a key instrument in Moscow's military plans.
We do not consider anyone our enemy or rival, but nevertheless we are preparing for this war in order to prevent it from happening.
The publication Belarus Tomorrow writes that Minsk may soon either join the attack on Ukraine or once again become a staging ground for a new offensive on Kyiv. The decision about a possible offensive depends mainly on the Kremlin, not on Lukashenko.
Such information should be classified as active operations in the information space aimed at shaping public opinion. Moreover, such operations should be attributed to the activities of Russian special services. The dissemination of this information is taking place against the backdrop of the Republic of Belarus drawing closer to the United States. Furthermore, the decision by President Trump's administration effectively removed the Republic of Belarus from the zone of military political influence of the Russian Federation.
Experts note that it would simply be impossible for the enemy to prepare a large-scale offensive without being detected by Ukrainian intelligence.
The Ukrainian intelligence community monitors any negative trends related to the redeployment of the armed forces of the Republic of Belarus or the expansion of the Russian Federation's military presence on the territory of this state.
As things stand right now, at this particular moment, there is really absolutely no reason to talk about any actual or immediate security threats coming from the territory of Belarus.
Lukashenko is trying to demonstrate strength while at the same time pleasing Putin in such a way that nothing threatens his own power. He is not interested in directly dragging Belarus into the Russian-Ukrainian war, since this could lead to extremely unpleasant strategic consequences for him, up to and including his removal from power. That's why he continues to curry favor with Putin, which he does with pleasure.
It seems that we have exactly the very same idea and perspective on this. You know our ideas and we know the Russian ideas. This is one homeland. I say from Brest to Vladivostok we have one homeland. Well, it happened not by our will that two states were formed here, and we must do everything so that our relations in this homeland are even closer than in a unitary state.
Lukashenko uses a well-known tactic, the so-called walking between the raindrops, meaning he tries to maneuver between the interests of the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, and the United States. He creates so-called centers of counterbalance, which allows him to solve his main issue, namely, retaining his own power and, accordingly, the possibility of passing it on by inheritance.
At the same time, there is no other area where Russia and Belarus have such close cooperation as in the military sphere. In January, Belarus received a new batch of some of the most powerful Russian fighter jets, the Su-30 SM-2.
It is also worth noting the emergence of information about the deployment of Oreshnik on the territory of the Republic of Belarus. But one main point is that Oreshnik is being deployed at most 6 kilometers from the Russian border. In other words, this essentially makes it possible to avoid the elimination of the launchers as a result of, let's say, retaliatory actions either by the Ukrainian side or by NATO countries.
In fact, today, the Belarusian defense industry has also shifted to a war footing, a move initiated by Lukashenko himself out of fear of losing power and the country. At the same time, the potato Führer has long tried not to rely solely on Russia and is seeking other sources of support for himself in case things go south for Moscow. Incidentally, for several months now, there have been discussions in the United States about the possibility of inviting Lukashenko to meet with Donald Trump at the White House.
And now an analysis of the operational situation on the Alexandrovka sector of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill and maim here as well. On the Alexandrovka front, the enemy launched 6 assaults in the areas of Alexandrogorod, Vishnevoye and Krasnogorskoye. At this moment, one battle is still ongoing. In addition, the settlement of Pizancy was subjected to an airstrike. And earlier this week, terrorist Russia attacked Ukrainian Lviv. Hits were recorded in different parts of the city, including the historic center. There are wounded as a result. The following report from our colleagues at the television news service tells how our medics heroically saved the wounded and how Lviv is trying to recover after this terrorist attack.
Right in the very center of the city, Soborna Square, just a few meters from here is Rynok Square. It was a direct hit by an enemy Shahed drone right in broad daylight. This place is always very crowded and there is heavy traffic. This Russian drone struck a residential building, an architectural monument, part of the Bernardine Monastery complex. Here is eyewitness video at the very moment of the strike. A fierce fire broke out immediately. The victims were evacuated.
pulled his leg.
Immediately after the shelling, Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that Ukraine expects a response from UNESCO. 17 apartments were destroyed. Residents and tourists are sharing how it all happened.
There was an air raid alert and we went downstairs. Well, everyone runs to the church. I decided to go there, waited about 10 minutes, and then there was a strike. It's a real pity. I feel so sorry for the people. The people who were inside, and the animals too. I feel sorry for them.
On the first floor of the attacked building, there are shops and coffee shops. They also suffered significant damage.
We had 2 baristas. There were also visitors, guests. They called back right away and said that a Shahed drone had hit them. There were 4 people on the summer terrace and 1 young man was injured.
Meanwhile, the air raid alert continued. Several more drones were heading toward Lviv. People had already managed to hide in shelters and underground passages. A new strike was recorded in a residential area in Sikiv. This is a residential high-rise building, and within a short period of time there was another hit, a repeated one.
In Sikiv, a 9-story residential building was attacked from 2 sides. Well, in my memory, I have never seen anything like this, because today residential buildings were deliberately targeted, and the heart of Lviv was deliberately attacked. This is a UNESCO zone. The Russians have nothing sacred.
19 buildings in this area were damaged by the explosion of enemy Shaheds. People are sharing what they've experienced.
One room is completely covered in glass, and the car is in the worst possible condition. I think there are even some drone fragments inside. It caught fire, but the emergency services were already here. They evacuated many people whose bodies were completely covered in shrapnel.
The first to rush to help the victims were military medics who happened to be near the impact site. In total, more than 30 people with various injuries were hospitalized in Lviv's hospital.
1 patient had a wound in the lumbosacral region. Another had a wound in the left thigh, a penetrating injury. A female patient was also admitted with an acute stress reaction.
Public transport operating near the impact sites was also damaged. The city authorities have already announced that residents whose apartments were damaged are being offered accommodation in hotels as well as compensation for rental housing.
And now we move to the Huliapol and Orikhiv directions of the front. The bloody rampage of the enemy army continues here as well. In the Huliapol direction, the defense forces successfully repelled 11 enemy attacks in the areas of Huliapol, Zaliznikne, Merne, and Sviato-Petrovka. The enemy carried out airstrikes in the areas of Verkhna Tersa, Dolinka, Lyubitske, and Novosoloshine. In the Orikhiv direction, the aggressor attacked in the areas of Tokmashka, Stepov, and Sherbaki. The area of Veselyanka was subjected to an airstrike. Meanwhile, Ukraine is once again shocking the world, and this is truly a black mark for the Kremlin. A new stunning development by our military engineers. It allows enemy ships to be destroyed from the depths of the sea. This is Cronus, and we're going to show it to you. Here you go.
It is impossible to see, almost impossible to detect. If it locks onto a target, there is no time left to react. Ukrainian developers have unveiled something that until recently seemed impossible. The underwater stealth device Kronos is capable of operating covertly, autonomously, and striking where the enemy least expects it.
These are, well, truly remarkable masterpieces in terms of surveillance, reconnaissance, and strategic sabotage, or even direct attack, featuring both sophisticated guided and more traditional unguided attack drones.
Kronos, this is not a classic submarine or just a drone, but a hybrid platform that combines several functions at once, from covert reconnaissance to a full-fledged strike operation. The submarine is capable of reaching up to 50 kilometers per hour underwater and up to 80 on the surface, diving to a depth of up to 100 meters in standard mode and withstanding critical loads up to 250. But the key feature is not the speed or even the depth, but its low visibility.
And not just for radars, but also for echo sounders, sonars, and marine radars. Because the hull of the submarine is made of composites, in other words, it's non-metallic.
Which means we're not just talking about technology, but about a new level of warfare where the enemy might not even realize where the strike came from. At the same time, Kronos is not just about stealth, but also about power. The device is equipped with 6 torpedoes capable of hitting targets at distances of up to 3 kilometers, turning this compact platform into a fully fledged combat tool. But perhaps even more important is its autonomy. The submarine can be remotely controlled from a distance of over 250 kilometers, which essentially turns it into a next-generation maritime drone capable of carrying out missions without direct crew involvement.
It can carry up to 11 people on board. The minimum crew required for the vessel is 3 people.
At the same time, Ukraine is also betting on another type of weapon that can shift the balance not just on a tactical, but on a strategic level. We're talking about domestic ballistic capabilities, a field that long remained in the shadows but is now increasingly coming to the forefront.
There are 2 major niches in this area. The first is so-called tactical ballistics with a range of up to 200 kilometers. The second is essentially strategic ballistics with a range of up to 850 kilometers.
According to experts, Ukraine is already in the final stages of developing a whole range of ballistic solutions. This is not about a single project, but several lines being worked on by different teams.
This includes the so-called ROM-type complex. There is information that it is in the final stages of testing. This means that Ukraine may acquire a whole range of different ballistic missiles with a range of up to 850 kilometers, and this could become a significant strategic turning point.
In fact, this means that not only frontline positions will be under threat, but also deep military targets, depots, logistical hubs, and the infrastructure that supports the entire war effort. Russia is physically incapable of shielding its entire territory from such strikes, which means a vulnerability is emerging that did not exist before. If underwater Ukraine relies on stealth and surprise, then in the air it relies on range and the inevitability of the strike. Together, this forms a new model of warfare, where the decisive factor is not the amount of equipment, but the ability to find the enemy's weak spots and strike where they are unprepared to defend.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy tried once to improve their position near the settlement of Novo-Usinove. In the Lyman direction, Ukrainian soldiers repelled 7 attempts by the invaders to advance in the areas of the settlements of Nadia, Tverdokolobove, Drobisheve, and Lyman. And now, here's another very interesting topic. The Kremlin court has sentenced Robert Brody Magyar, the head of the armed forces of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, to 18 years in prison. Of course, this sentence was delivered in absentia. Magyar is free and continues working on destroying enemy equipment and personnel. He does his job superbly. That's exactly why things are heating up so much in the Kremlin. You'll see everything for yourselves now.
On Monday, the unmanned systems forces destroyed a warehouse with Russian Shaheds, a train carrying fuel and lubricants, and a Tor air defense system. Less than 24 hours later, the port of UST-LUGA in the Leningrad region was attacked. This is the largest oil transshipment terminal in Western Russia. Almost every day, the unmanned systems forces carry out similar strikes. In addition, Ukrainian drones are systematically eliminating hundreds of Russian soldiers. Even Russian public channels are complaining about the effective work of the unmanned systems forces under the leadership of Robert Brody, callsign Magyar.
Just think about it. As of today, there is a name-by-name list of more than 200,000 dead Russian servicemen. And on Magyar's channel alone, videos showing Russian soldiers being killed by FPV drones are published several times a week. Each of these videos shows between 50 and 100 killed. And his channel releases several such videos every week. And there are dozens of such channels in total belonging to different UAV units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The current fighting resembles cattle slaughter in Siberia, only instead of cows, it's people.
After Magyar was appointed commander of the unmanned systems forces in the summer of 2025, Russian losses increased significantly. In December, for the first time, they exceeded the rate at which new soldiers were being recruited. The other day, a Rostov court sentenced Brody to 18 years in a high-security penal colony. According to the commander of the unmanned systems forces, this is true recognition and success.
A minute of hype. A scapegoat has been found. Today, the miserable Rostov court added another 18 years of high-security imprisonment to Magyar's previous sentences, this time for terrorism related to Nalivaikas, fuel and energy facilities in the swamps. And already on March 25th, the next Moscow court will summon and consider the liquidation of war correspondence and the use of remote mining. Plus, 25 years are guaranteed. The cascading practice is interesting. At this rate, 500 years isn't far off.
According to Brody's estimates, unmanned systems account for more than a third of Russian army losses, while making up only 2% of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The power of unmanned systems trades 400 Russian lives for one Ukrainian. December 2025 became a turning point. Confirmed losses of the Russian army from Ukrainian drones have, for the first time, exceeded the rate at which the occupiers are recruiting new soldiers.
If there is no infantry left in a battalion, the Russians don't disband it. They send officers to the front instead. They are the easiest targets because they don't know how to fight.
In the 5th year of the war, Ukraine's main objective became not only holding its own territories, but also destroying Russian forces faster than the Kremlin can replenish them. And this strategy is already working. With the arrival of spring, activity on the front has intensified. The Russian army is once again trying to advance, and just recently, the drone forces under the command of Madiyar set a new record.
Right now, conditions in the east of our country are quite unfavorable for the use of UAVs, and the enemy tried to take advantage of this factor to launch a large-scale offensive on various sections of the front. Yes, we have all seen the figure of 900 destroyed Shaheds as stated by Robert Brody, the commander of the drone forces. What matters is that a huge number of Russian servicemen have actually been eliminated, and each elimination is confirmed by photo and video evidence.
I have no moral doubts whatsoever. A man with a rifle in his hands is on my land coming to kill me. Either I kill him or he kills me. Millions of Ukrainians, including my mother, draw strength from what we are doing.
In his recent interview with the British magazine The Economist, Madiyar stated that his goal is to increase the enemy's monthly losses to 50,000. And it seems that he will accomplish this task.
That's all for today. But very soon on Front News, there will be new unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.